You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Oregon landlords whose tenants are behind on rent can now apply for relief. And the way this headline should go is they can now apply for relief if they forgive 20% of the tenant's back owed rent. That's right. Hey, we'll give you coverage on this, but you got to help us out. And because this whole tenant thing, we really like the tenants. We don't really like you as landlords. So therefore, we're going to ask you to chip in here, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, and forgive 20% of your tenant's rent. What world is this? Why wouldn't you just do 100%? Why are the landlords supposed to chip in and not the tenants? How about we just do a promissory note from each of the tenants? Yeah, they're going to chip in 20% because they're the ones getting off scot-free, right? They're the ones not paying. The landlords, they still got to pay their mortgage. They're not getting off scot-free. And yet the landlords, and you know what, if they don't have a mortgage, good on them, but then they're losing 20% of their income because they're probably retirees, because those are the only people that can afford to pay off or have had enough time to get a property free and clear. All right, that's what we're covering today. This is a ridiculous story because Oregon government, you are screwed up and you shouldn't be asking your landlords to forgive 20% of the tenant's back owed rent. Just a no-go. All right, before we get into this, if you're new here, thanks for joining. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, but more importantly, I read the news that most of you enjoy hearing. All right, let's get into it. And this is an Oregon Live, an Oregonian story. And I had a handful of you guys send this one to me, so thank you so much. Keep sending the stories. I take a look at all of them, and I read them as I've got the demand. It's a supply and demand. You guys supply it and you demand it, and then I read it, right? All right. Landlords in Oregon whose tenants have fallen behind on rent during the coronavirus pandemic can now apply for relief from the state. Considering the pandemic is almost a year old, it's a little slow, isn't it? I mean, business owners got their money, their PPP money, their Fed money back last, April? May? Yeah, this is a long time coming, but the problem is that for states to issue help, they've got to have the budget, and guess what? They're relying basically on some federal money coming through too as well. Applications for Oregon's new Landlord Compensation Fund open Wednesday, nearly 2 months after state lawmakers allocated $150 million to seed the program. How much back rent is there owed in Oregon? I got a feeling it's way more than that, but I don't know. $150 million just doesn't seem like all that much. Landlords can apply for relief to cover 80% of the rent they are owed by residential tenants dating back to April 2020. However, they will be required to forgive 20% of unpaid rent. Why? That's what I would ask. Why? How is this equitable? We're always talking about equitable. How is that equitable? How does that make sense in any world? Is it because they are the haves and tenants are the have-nots? I don't care. If you sign a contract that you're going to pay rent, you got to pay rent. And now the state is saying, well, you can have it forgiven, but only 80%. Because you got to forgive 20% of your tenant's rent just because that's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to do to help us out. This drives me crazy. Tenants whose landlords are approved for the money will have their unpaid rent bill forgiven for the months the landlord receives funding. So those guys get off scot-free, and the owners, they got to take a 20% whack. Here's one of my thoughts. At least 10%, if not more, tenants out there, 1 in 10 tenants is like, you know what? I still have my job, but because they can't kick me out, I'm just not going to pay my rent. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go down this road of, this is a little sneaky. This is a little underhanded. I've still got my consulting job. I've still got my engineering job. I'm working from home, but I'm going to claim hardship and I'm not going to pay any rent just because. I think there's a fair amount of that going on. I have heard stories of that firsthand from landlords. I don't know what percentage it is. and I don't really have any way of knowing. But if I was the state of Washington, I would say that it's based on the data and the science that 1 out of 10 tenants should be paying who aren't. Oh, they're being dishonest. So because we know at least some percentage of tenants out there are not paying when they should be, isn't that kind of putting even just more responsibility on the landlords? I mean, this is bogus. 20% you got to forgive if you're a landlord. No. Nicole Sting, a spokeswoman for Oregon Housing Community Services, which is administering the fund, said her agency will make $50 million available during the first round of funding. Applications for the first round of funding will be open until March 2nd. That is not very long. The agency expects to offer at least 3 rounds of funding before the end of June. Okay, so they're going to do it in rounds. With limited money available, I have read this article. I just don't get into the details on the first scoop. I kind of go through it, look through it, and all right, do I understand enough of the general of this article to be able to talk about it intelligently? Sometimes not, and I still record it because you guys want to hear it, and I'm just going to give it my best shot. With limited money available, the state has opted to prioritize landlords owed the greatest percentage of rent and those with fewer properties. The state will make funding decisions after the application window closes. Tenants must sign a declaration of financial hardship for landlords to submit with their applications. All right, here's another issue. Why should the landlords have to have something signed by Mr. or Mrs. Tenant who are not paying? You've probably already got this relationship. If your tenant hasn't been paying and they could be, obviously there's a lot of cases where tenants, they lost their job, whatever, and they can't pay, just can't pay. All right. But why put that pressure right back on the landlord? Hey, you got to give up 20% of what is owed to you. It makes no sense. And now, so the second thing on this that I'm not a big fan of, tenants must sign a declaration of financial hardship for landlords to submit with their applications. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Tenant, I know you haven't been paying and I've been really harping on you to pay. And I know I've been threatening to evict you when I can, but could you come over? Could you give me this signed affidavit saying you had financial hardship, even though we both know you didn't? And I need to have this paperwork so I can get 80% of the rent that you owed paid by the state. Craziness. And that's a requirement for some landlords. That's a requirement that some landlords raised concerns about during conversations with Oregon Housing and Community Services in January. Those landlords worried about losing out on the opportunity to receive relief if their tenants didn't sign the declaration. Can't you see a tenant going, I'm just not going to pay, so screw you. I'm not signing anything. Take a hike. Take a hike. Oregon lawmakers created the new Landlord Compensation Fund in December as part of legislation that extended the state's eviction moratorium through June for renters who declare they are experiencing financial hardship. You can see where I sit on this one. I am forever battling owners' rights. I mean, we just are. It's like, oh, so you worked really hard throughout your life and you created equity, you created ownership interest in a property, and now you're slowly being stripped of that through all of this nonsense. Oh, hey, yeah, there's an eviction moratorium. You can't really use your property the way you want it. Oh, you're owed back rent? Well, 20% of that, whack that off, and we'll cover the other 80. Thanks so much, State of Oregon. Along with allocating $150 million to the new fund, lawmakers provided an additional $50 million to existing rent relief programs. Tenants can find out how to apply for that relief through local community action agencies or by calling 211, not 911, 211. That assistance will also be paid directly to landlords to cover past due rent. Oregon Housing and Community Services is also receiving roughly $200 million more in rent assistance from the federal government. Sting said last month, she said the agency was waiting on additional guidance before allocating those funds. Got to get the deets. They got to get the deets before they can talk about it. Earlier this month, Senator Lynn Findley, Republican from Vail, and Senator Betsy Johnson, Democrat from Scappoose, introduced, that has got to be an Indian word, right? Scappoose? Was there a Scappoose Nation or can't remember, to town. Yep. They introduced a separate bill that would offer tax credits over a 5-year period to landlords who forgive past due rent. Yeah, no go on that. Give me that hard, cold cash. Give that to me in my pocket because that's what you signed your contract for. Don't want a credit. I don't want 80% of the back rent owed to me, paid to me. I don't want to give up 20%. I want all the money because you signed a contract and you should pay. That's where I'm at. If you lose your job, then figure it out. That's kind of where I sit. I know that sounds hardcore. But I'm a real estate guy. That's the way I see it. You sign a contract? Yep. You don't pay? We'll see you in court. That's how real estate has gone for me the last 35 years. Why would it be different now? Oh, because things are different in 2020 and 21. We've got a pandemic. We've got all kinds of stuff going on, right? We just do things differently now. It's not the same. Okay, and so we've got that whole tax credit. And landlords, and of this, they would be able to take tax credits over a 5-year period who forgive past due rent. And landlords would be allowed to sell credits to other Oregon taxpayers. Hey, I got too many credits here because I don't have enough income to offset these bad boys. Let me sell you a tax credit. 30 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar. Hey, let's make a deal. I don't know. This is just going down some crazy little roads, right? Multifamily Northwest, a rental industry group whose members include mostly large landlords and property managers, expressed support for the bill when Johnson first floated the idea ahead of the December special session. But lawmakers ultimately only took up legislation in December to extend the eviction moratorium and create the Landlord Compensation Fund. During public testimony in December, some landlords raised concerns about key elements of the new fund. I can't imagine why. They're losing 20% of what is owed to them, and they got to go jump through a bunch of hoops that may or may not be that easy to jump through. Violet Wilson, a property owner and landlord in Kaiser, said at the time that she had 7 tenants who owned a combined $30,000 in back rent and expected their debt to double in the next 6 months. So she would be owed $60,000. And the state of Oregon is saying, you know what? If you take off $12,000 of that, we will gladly pay you Tuesday $48,000. What world is that fair in? That's the last I'm going to say about that until I say it some more. She criticized the requirement that landlords forgive 20% of rent owed to access the assistance and expressed worry that the assistance wouldn't reach landlords quickly enough. I understand that this is being done to stretch dollars, but so why are landlords expected to stretch dollars? Why not tenants? Let's make the tenants pay. But we can't do the same, Wilson said. Talking about the landlords, her worry about not being able to quickly access assistance appears to have been justified. Landlords approved for funding through the new compensation fund are unlikely to see any money until at least mid-March, a full year after the state imposed its first eviction moratorium in response to the pandemic. Sting had expressed hope in January that the application process for the funding could open as early as the first week of February, but the agency spent several extra weeks speaking with landlord groups and testing out the online application site before officially opening the fund this week. They were reimagining, they were rethinking, but they actually did something. So, and I am excited to see that there's finally a news story where landlords are addressed. Don't get me wrong. I am pumped for landlords. Go landlords. You guys can do it. You guys can finish get across that finish line. Get some of your rent paid back. I just think that every single time we face a situation like this, for some reason, some crazy reason, we are always asking the people in ownership to give up a bunch of their ownership. And that's, the 20%. I said I wasn't going to talk about it. I just did. I lied. Sorry. Once landlords apply, it could take several weeks for the state to make funding decisions before money is released to local housing authorities to distribute. Okay, so money is coming. It's going to be there, but it's going to take a little bit, right? Not unlike anything else. I think the only thing that got rolled out really quickly is the PPP money, right? that got rolled out pretty quick. I was surprised. I've talked to a lot of other business owners, and they're like, considering how much money that was, that came out pretty fast. And I understand, hey, the state's budgets are just absolutely destroyed right now. But the states have put so much pressure unnecessarily on landlords in this situation. Let's just make the eviction moratorium. Let's just kick that out for month after month after month after month, giving no support to people who actually own property. They just don't do it. You guys get all the help here. Moratorium. You guys over here, yeah. Good luck with that one. I hope you're able to hold on to your properties if you have a mortgage, because without any income coming through, we know that might be difficult, but you're on your own. It's also unclear how many landlords that are owed rent will actually be able to access money through the new fund. We just don't know. A September report commissioned by the National Council of State Housing Finance Agencies, these big, huge governmental names, National Council of State Housing Finance Agencies. I think they do that so that you're just like, I'm so bored reading the name, I'm just not going to go any further. This agency estimated that Oregon renters would miss between $249 million and $378 million in rent payments by January. Okay, so call it $250 million up to over $333 billion. And we've got a couple $100 million. All right. So we might be able to cover a decent percentage of that. That number, the 249 to 378 million, that number is sure to rise as the pandemic continues, and the landlord compensation fund won't come close to covering that amount of past due rent. There you go. It's not going to come close. All right. So what's going to happen? Oregon tenants who are unable to access rent relief on their own or whose landlords don't receive funding through the state's new compensation fund will be obligated to pay the entirety of their past due rent when the state eviction moratoriums end in late June, potentially leaving tens of thousands in an impossible situation. And this is what we keep talking about. All you're doing by kicking out that eviction moratorium is just kicking the can down the road. When are we going to deal with it? When are we going to deal with it? Soon, I hope. Problem is the states know this is coming, and yet they've created this scenario, and they're like, geez, what are we going to do? All these landlords are owed a bunch of money. All these tenants, I mean, they're just not paying because, we've closed down their businesses, and we've got this horrible economic environment now, and nobody wants to start up a new business. So all these unemployed tenants, geez, what do we do? Well, let's spend some time reimagining and rethinking. And for the time being, let's just extend out that moratorium. Let's just kick it out another 6 months. Because, we need the time, clearly. We got to reimagine and rethink. And in the meantime, the owners, they got no income coming in and they can't do a damn thing with their property. That sucks. Portland State University's Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative. Here's another one. Portland State University's Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative estimated in a February report that approximately 89,000 Oregon households owed back rent and that it could cost the state up to $3.3 billion with a B to respond to mass evictions if those renters aren't offered the support they need to avoid being evicted. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a major problem on our hands, and how are we going to solve it? I don't know. I honestly don't know. The day of reckoning is coming, and I hate to be, one of those nervous Nelly fear-mongerers, but this is a situation, the whole eviction moratorium, it's not going to go away quietly. You're going to see a lot of people get evicted because guess what? Landlords who don't have any other options, they need to evict people who haven't been paying so that they can get somebody into their property who can pay. It is called cash flow, folks. Pretty basic, right? And yet our genius representatives at the state level, they're like, well, let's just do the eviction moratorium and we'll kind of see how this works out. Another social experiment. Let's just see how it goes. Lawmakers who have extended the state's eviction moratorium multiple times over the last year and could take steps to do that again before June But any further extension of the moratorium would likely face intense pushback from landlords. Imagine. It's shocking. Oh, you landlords, you are a hardened bunch. You're wanting money for your property? You guys are hardcore. Many of whom are feeling the strain of going nearly a year without payments. Can you imagine feeling the strain at a year out? If I haven't been paid by my tenants, I'm going bonkers. I'm at the point of something's going to pop. Something's going to go sideways. And that has been particularly tough on small independent landlords who rely on monthly payments to pay their own bills. Pay that mortgage, pay the utilities, pay whatever stuff that you're covering for the tenant, because tenants usually get some kind of free ride, right? Landlords kick in, they pay. Well, not anymore. In the New World Order, tenants they just get, they get whatever. A group of landlords filed a lawsuit against Governor Kate Brown, the state of Oregon, Multnomah County, and the city of Portland in federal court in December in an attempt to invalidate the state's most recent extension of the eviction moratorium. The lawsuit is still ongoing. And I don't think, how is any of this going to end up? It's all going to end up in court. Some group is going to be suing everybody for everything. Everybody's going to sue the state because guess what? The state has done all this stuff and they're not really providing any solutions for a long-term way to resolve it. We're just not. We're just kicking out the moratorium extensions and hoping, maybe all these guys will go back and the tenants can make some really fast money, because, they're working again, and then they'll just pay all their rent back and we'll all be happy and this problem will go away and people will forget about this. No, that's not going to happen. They're going to have all kinds of lawsuits and it's going to be just bogged down. The state court system's already bogged down. Everything is bogged down due to COVID because everybody's working from home and things aren't getting done the way they should be due to COVID. That's right, COVID. Blame everything on COVID. Got a toothache? Blame it on COVID. That's just what we're doing. All right, so my bonus thing that I'm going to talk about, something pretty funny. Where is my phone? A reader or viewer with the initials of AW, you know who you are. I keep everything anonymous because, let's face it, in today's political environment, if you say anything remotely seen as reasonable / conservative, you become a target. You got a big old target right here on your face. People want to take you out. So I keep everybody anonymous as a result. But I will throw out some initials. I'm not going to say where you're from or anything like that. But they sent me, it's kind of a meme. It's more of it's like a chart, and I'm reading it off of my phone. It's a chart that starts, and it has to do with the Minneapolis City Council defunding police and kind of how that process has gone. Because I just did a podcast and it was kind of funny. And this meme here is kind of what I was thinking. The end result was Minneapolis to spend $6.4 million to recruit more police officers. And that is kind of the full circle for this ridiculous defund the police thing, right? And this meme here, so it starts off with NPR doing an article on Minneapolis, and this was June 26th, I think. Minneapolis Council moves to defend police, establish holistic public safety force. This was right after the whole George Floyd thing and all the riots and all that. And that's when defunding the police was just thought to be just the next best thing ever. And it was just a genius concept. All this systemic racism, let's defund the police. That's going to really solve things. So let me read that one again. Minneapolis Council moves to defund police, establish holistic public safety force. That means social workers unarmed. Good luck with that. And most of us kind of all saw through that and went, let's watch this train wreck happen because it's gonna, right? All right, that's the first one. The second one, and they've got like an arrow drawing to the Washington Post headline, and it says, Minneapolis violence surges as police officers leave department in droves. I mean, we all saw that one coming, right? Seattle police departments had, couple hundred police officers leave? Couple hundred. I mean, that's not a small exodus. That is a mass exodus. Same thing in Minneapolis. All right, we don't want to be a cop here anymore. This is no good. So the third the headline is Minneapolis City Council alarmed by surge in crime months after voting to defund the police. And this is all sequentially. I mean, this is all happening sequentially. So the city council, oh, geez, maybe we shouldn't have defunded the police. Maybe that wasn't our best call ever. Can we get a redo on that? Can we get a gimme? Can we get a bogey on that? Can we get some of those cops back? God, this doesn't make us look good. All right, the fourth headline, NPR News. I'm not sure what NPR is, but with violent crime on the rise in Minneapolis, city council asks, where are the police? ? Where's the cops? Where's our police force that keeps our citizens safe? I mean, they're at that point, they're like, oh, geez, this is not good. All right. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the fifth one. This is 5. If you're watching on the video, this is 5 fingers. This is 4, 5, 4. So some Minneapolis city council members would like a redo on defunding the police report. That's another headline. They literally are like, oh, yeah, bad call. We need a redo. And finally, the sixth one, Minneapolis to spend $6.4 million to recruit more police officers. And that was, I think, when was the date on that bad boy? February. So literally 8 months after thinking and proclaiming that defunding the police is the be-all and end-all, let's defund the police by 50% right now. That's what all the signs on CHOP said. Sign on the western end of CHOP and the sign on the eastern end of CHOP. Defund the police by 50% right now. Well, Minneapolis has been through that little drill. Guess what? They are funding the police. They're funding. They're not defunding. They're funding. Because anybody in their right mind kind of understands, you defund the police, good luck with that. Best of luck with that to your citizens. That's what I continually say. People argue and say, yeah, but in a smaller town without much crime, you might be able to get away with some social workers going out to some calls that otherwise in a big city, it's not going to work out well. Not going to work out well. You got knife-wielding citizens here in Seattle asking to be, have their lives ended by the police. And as they go after the police with a knife in a threatening manner, guess what happens? You got it. Game over. That's not going to go well if you're sending out an unarmed social worker. That's my, as a real estate expert, that is my thinking. All right, guys, that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, love to have you support by sharing the content, subscribing, all that stuff that a YouTuber has to say. All right, do it. I know you can. Again, my name is Sean Reynolds. I'm the owner of Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds and Kline Appraisal. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. All right, bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.